Peace and Black Power. Welcome to another edition of Baba TV House of Consciousness up in Syracuse with Brother Jake. By now, I'm sure many of you have become well acquainted with Brother Jake and his mission of holistic health and so forth. And today, he has a presentation that he wants to give to the people, and that is the missing link to African holistic God consciousness. Talk a little bit, give us a little preamble before the presentation, brother.
Okay. Good evening, family. Good afternoon, family. The reason I'm doing this presentation on the holistic African God consciousness is because it seems as if somewhere along the line we are forgetting that the biggest way to destroy a people is through their food supply and through their medical supply. So this presentation is a result of looking at how our people are dwindling away in disease, discomfort, and slow and a very timely death. So the solution is medicinal herbs that Dr. Ila Africa talks about, as well as some of our other elders and master teachers like Dr. Sebi, Queen of Fu, a local doctor, Dr. Jennifer Daniels, Dr. Tim Morrow from the University of Common Sense. So this is a collection of a collage of the information that I've been learning and studying, and even more so putting into practical application over the last 3 years into my personal health and well-being.
The missing link in regards to African holistic God consciousness in regards to our liberation and freedom as a people. Before I bring up Brother Jake, I do have a few announcements. Number one, if I stumble, forgive me. I'm a little under the weather today, but I wouldn't miss this for the world, okay? All right. I'm not feeling my healthy best, but I'm here. Okay. The first announcement I'd like to make, the 100 Black Men of Syracuse, which the Dr. Hendrick Clark Historical Study Group is under the umbrella of, so we get a chance to use this nice facility when we want to. We kicked off our second year of the Saturday Academy, right? What the Saturday Academy is, it consists of grades 5 through 8. It's at Syracuse Academy of Science. They gave us the run of the school on Saturdays, right? We have our 5th through 8th grade broken down into boys in one classes, girls on the other. We've been fortunate this year to have as our administrator Sister Jackie Grace and also Brother Corey Mitchell. So 2 beautiful, beautiful educators. That's where I was 8 o'clock this morning. We start from 8 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. So if you have any, know of any cousins, nephews, children, 5th through 8th grade, I think they can benefit from the Saturday Academy. What we're trying to do is, our goal is to produce one of the first public charter schools here in Syracuse, using the example of the Eagle Academy in New York City, which has 5. Okay? So if you know any young people ages grade through 5th through 8th, we would love to get them signed up. Okay? All right. Second, now this one is really important. February 20th, we will be discussing finally the introduction to African civilization. Now this is the study group. We're going to be talking about the first 3 chapters of this book. Now, if you don't have a book and if you don't read the book, that's no reason to not show up, right? You can be able to add on also. of what we talk about. So I don't want anybody, if they didn't read the chapters, not to show up. Because we have some that doesn't read as well as others, and we don't want you to be put out by if you can't catch up with the book. Because we're going to show in between the reading, it's going to go like this. 1 month we'll read 3 chapters, discuss it. I told everybody to get 20 points of interest in the form of a question or a statement about the 3 chapters they read, and we'll discuss it. The following month we'll show a video that support the 3 chapters that we just read. So that gives everybody 2 months to read 3 chapters. I think in 2 months' time, we should be able to read 3 chapters. Now, that's February 20th. I hope I'm not here by myself on February 20th, because nobody read 3 chapters, okay? But if I am, I just talk to myself. I'll be here talking to myself about the 3 chapters. So I hope if anybody need a book, I have a couple more for sale. It's a great teaching tool. That's the Introduction to African Civilization. That's going to launch our Black History Month program. Thirdly, and not least, I arranged for a brother. Go ahead.
Could you tell them the author, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The author is John G. Jackson. The foreword of the book is our great scholar, Runoko Rashidi. And the introduction to the book is by ours truly, Dr. John Hendrick Clark. Okay? Excellent book. Everyone should have this in their library. Okay. Now, thirdly, before I let Jake come up, I want to mention, I have a friend in New York that used to go to SU University. When he was here, his name was Quentin Stiff. He goes by the name now of Aji Tayemba. Aji is an intellectual scholar, graduate of, hold 2 master's degrees in African American studies. I call him a scholar. He like to play that down, but he's truly a scholar. I have arranged for him to speak and lecture at OCC February 25th at 3 o'clock. That'll be on a Thursday. I know that might be difficult for some. That's going to be on a Thursday at 3 o'clock at the Whitney room. That's at Whitney Hall, the room 101. That's when you first drive into OCC. You'll see the RCC building right there. If you look to the right, the first one is Whitney Hall. Go straight in there, room 101. He's going to also do a book signing. He has written 4 books. The first one, I'm quite sure everybody might be familiar with. It's called Paid in Full. How many hands? Paid in Full. The movie. El Pole, Rich Porter, and what's the other one? AZ. Yeah. He begged AZ for an interview and finally got the interview, so he wrote the book that became the movie. He also wrote this one, Truth for Our Youth, which is a great read, and the Blueprint Handbook for BSU, right? And this is mainly for college African American organizations that he written. And the third book is My 2 Cents that he wrote. It's a combination of blogs and stuff that he's been putting online that he wrote. He's going to do a book signing also. That's February 25th. I hope people here that can make it. and support the brother coming in from New York on his own dime, and be there. Now, I'd like to bring up, one more thing. I know he's going to mention it, but I got to share this book, African Holistic Health. After Jake's lecture, either go on Amazon, wherever you might find a book. You can go to Human bookstore, online site, Barnes & Noble online site.
African World Books.
African World Books, thank you, Baba. Online. Find this book, and this should be a part of your library. I had this book over 20 years, and then when I finally tapped into it, oh man, I was so amazed. You know, we're kind of fearful of things that's going to make us change or see ourselves do things that we normally don't do. So please get this book and add it to your library. On that note, I'm going to remove my things and bring up Brother Jake. Y'all give him a warm black hand. And a white hand too, Native American hand too. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Brother Jake.
My name is Brother Jake. Jacob. Most people call me Jacob. We're family, so family can call me by my full name. It wasn't always nice to be called Jacob when I was coming up and I was young. Jacob meant I had to run a lot. I want to start out by saying that you'll have to bear with me. This will be my very first presentation. I hope one of many. I want to give a shout out. He already actually started my presentation for me because he talked about Dr. La Ila Africa. The book that he spoke about is the reason why I'm doing this presentation. The book that he talked about, this is another version of that book. My wife can hold up another version of it. This book was written in 1983. The first time I got in touch with this book, it was so shocking to me that I put the book down. I was kind of upset. So one of the things that Brother Jerome always does, and I have to have some aids because we had some technical difficulties, so I had an introduction, so now I'm ad-libbing my introduction. But one of the things Brother Jerome always does is when he starts out with his lectures, he starts out by talking about a term, cognitive dissonance. Does anybody remember hearing that term before? Cognitive dissonance, right? Yeah. So this is what it says. This is why people get upset when you challenge what they hold most closely. Cognitive dissonance says there's a mental conflict that occurs when beliefs or assumptions are contradicted by new information. The first time we heard that term, it was by Frantz Fanon. And this was a gentleman from, I believe, Paris. He lived on the other side of the planet, and he wrote a series of books. I remember one called The Black Bourgeoisie. I think that was one. But anyway, he wrote a series of books detailing our condition. So, but it says that when most of us are confronted with a challenge of new information, most people seek to preserve that current understanding of the world by rejecting, explaining away, or avoiding the new information, or by convincing themselves that no conflict really exists. Cognitive dissonance is nonetheless considered an explanation for the attitude change. Something that I remember hearing from the time I was old enough to read, and maybe I'll start it out and maybe one of y'all can finish it for me. If you want to hide something from a black man,
Put it in a book. Put it in a book.
because it's the last place that he will look, right? We all heard that. How many people, does that bother anybody here in this room?
Yes.
It shouldn't, right? Because we're all readers, right? Everybody that's here today belongs to the Dr. John Henry Clark study group and shows up regularly. And we read our chapters ahead of time so that when it's time to ask questions on what we're studying, everybody's well prepared, right? We know that we're working on that, right? Can I get a we're working on that?
Working on that.
Okay. This presentation, the missing link in regards to African holistic God consciousness, is a direct result of some quotes that came out of this book, African Holistic Health, from Dr. La Ila Africa. I also want to say that some of what I've learned and I'm going to talk about today also comes from Queen Afu. Has anybody heard of Queen Afu? Okay, if you haven't heard of Queen Afu, then it is imperative that you read her works, because her works specifically for the African woman, but for anybody in particular, but specifically the African woman, she talks about how we heal ourselves. She wrote another book called Man, Heal Thyself. This book came up after the Million Man March, the 1995 Million Man March. And this is the journey to optimum wellness for men. I had a presentation that I wanted to show you, but since I can't show you the presentation, and because I have to give big props for this brother whose name is Cochise Taraksa. He did a film, I believe it's about 2 years old now. It's called Urban Kryptonite. It is 4 hours long, and it has about 12 of our master teachers in regards to health. Tahuti Mayad is one. Dr. Layla Africa is another one. Dr. B. Cyrus is another one. Dr. Iris Lantham is another one. Dr. Ali Muhammad, Abundance Child, Minister Inky, Queen Vida Amu, Nubian I. Sutton. There are so many people that are making presentations in this documentary. Now, the reason why I'm giving you this, I want to give respect, honor, and glory to everybody that has allowed me over the last 25 years to come into this information. I could tell you that the very first time I was beginning to understand about health, I had a Muslim brother who was formerly with the Nation of Islam introduce me to something called blackstrap molasses. He also introduced me to seaweed, which is now known as Irish moss. Bladder wrack is one. Kelp is another. And these are all things, these are all medicinal herbs. So this whole presentation, and what I believe, what Dr. La Ila Africa believes, is until we restore our health, there is no liberation. There is no revolution. So that's first and foremost. I want to give a couple of other shout outs. I think it's necessary because we are in Syracuse, New York. about 15 years ago, I've developed a close relationship with Dr. Jennifer Daniels. Is everybody here familiar with Dr. Jennifer Daniels? Okay. I had the pleasure of spending days on end with her, and also got involved in a business with her. Dr. Jennifer Daniels has, well, here's the short version. Dr. Jennifer Daniels was a Syracuse's own, a Syracuse product, who as a young child decided to grow up, and she wanted to help people. She wanted to heal people. This was her sole mission in life. She knew, most people talk about what we want to be when we grow up, but not only did she know what she wanted to be when she grew up, she stayed the course, right? Not only did she stay the course, but she went to the best universities in this country, graduated at the top of her class. While she was getting her medical degree, she was also going to the Wharton School of Business, which is the top school of business in this country. So she did a dual bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate degree, and got all the proper certifications, and then, true to form, came back to Syracuse. 2 blocks down the road, she opened up 3 blocks down the road, I think, she opened up a medical practice. So she built her business and put it in the community, and she built it from the ground up. At the end of the street on Midland, she built her home, a double lot. And her goal was to heal our people. Unfortunately, when you set out on a course of action, you are met with, not everybody's in agreement with what you're trying to do. So the short version that she told me is that she found out that by prescribing medications and prescribing people to go see other doctors, they would end up doing surgeries. I'm talking about allopathic medicine, okay? This is modern medicine. This is the medicine that has been around for the last 265 years. And it starts out with they have taken, which is going to be my lecture, the missing link, which is medicinal herbs. They have taken these medicinal herbs, and they have taken components out of these medicinal herbs, and they have turned them into what they call pharmacology. And then they give you something that was once natural or organic. It becomes unnatural and inorganic, and then they give it to you to heal you. And they charge you whatever they want to charge you for it. Now, having said that, Dr. Jennifer Daniels found out that within a short period of time, she was not healing anyone. She was not helping anyone. The only thing she was doing, and with big pharmaceutical companies now, the only thing she found out that she was doing was prescribing medications and getting free trips to go wherever, because that's what big pharma does. So she decided that she is tired of going to, and this is where her exact words to me. She said, I'm tired of going to funerals. This is not why I got in the business and going to medical school. I'm tired of going to funerals. I want to go to weddings. I want to go to celebrations of new life. This is not what I signed up for. So she started doing some research, and upon doing this research, she started going back to natural means and natural methods to heal people. It started out for her on one of the Native American Indian reservations, because she was working with a whole lot of people on the Indian reservation, because when she was doing her residency, I think she was in another state. Anyway, So she started using natural means to heal, long before the 265 years of modern so-called allopathic medicine. That's what it's called, but we know that we have to go back to our roots. We have to go back to our history. I'm going to give a quick plug-in to Dr. Sebi. Has anybody heard of Dr. Sebi?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm glad some of you have heard of Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi has been considered controversial, to say the least. And I'll tell you why. Brief history on Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi, based upon his mother's suggestion, decided to put an ad out in the New York Times, the Daily News, and I believe the New York Post. I might have 2 out of the 3 of those newspapers, but anyway, they were big newspapers in New York City. And he put an ad in the paper saying that he has healed people, cured people from HIV/AIDS, right? He did that in 1995. In 1997, he found himself arrested and charged by the Attorney General of New York State for practicing medicine without a license. Okay? The short version is this: they arrested him, they took him to court, and he won his case. Okay? We're talking about the Supreme Court of New York State. He won his case, and the short version is this. The short version is, this is his reasoning behind it, and this is part of what he said. He says that if you were to take a gorilla out of Africa and put him in Alaska, the gorilla probably wouldn't survive a week. He also said that if you took a polar bear out of Alaska and put him in Africa, he probably wouldn't survive a week. Here it is. African people have been taken, and this is controversial for some people, but I'm not dealing with controversy here, have taken Africans out of Africa through the transatlantic slave trade and brought them to America. And since we have been here, we have not eaten the food that is indigenous to our aboriginal nature. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, he's not practicing medicine at all. The whole basis for his argument is we need to eat live food. We need to eat real food. What we have been eating, and some of us can go back to the slave quarters. I'm sure there's people here that are from the South, has come from the South. Their families have come from the South. But you know what we were forced to eat. We were forced to eat, I don't even want to call them table scraps. We were forced to eat everything that wasn't edible. Okay? Now I want to remind you, we're talking about the term cognitive dissonance, right?
That's right.
How many people here know that you shouldn't eat pork? We can probably give a whole lot of honor and praise, right, to the Nation of Islam for promoting that, right? Mm-hmm. That's probably the way most of you heard of that, right?
Right.
Well, I happen to hear it from a different standpoint, because my grandfather, or I should say my adopted grandfather, was Rabbi W.A. Matthews. So I grew up in an Ethiopian Hebrew congregations, and we followed all the dietary laws of the Old Testament. So I never ate pork. I didn't know what it was like to eat pork. It wasn't until I ran away from home, like most of us do, in our rebellious nature at some point, that I couldn't wait to be black, right? Because I'm confused, right, in my mind. And in my confusion, I thought that if I ate some pork because I was having an identity crisis. I know I'm not the only one that is black, African American, whatever term you want to use, and having an identity crisis. So I ate this pork for the very first, and I'm not talking about chitlins. That was disgusting to me. There was nothing that could make me, just the smell alone in the house that I was in, said there's no way in the world I'm putting that in my body, right? Some of us come from there and can relate to that. But I'm sure there's other ones of us. If you grew up on it and mama said, this is what you're eating, then you're going to eat what mama says to eat, right? But that's neither here nor there. So I ate pork for the first time. And if you can remember in the early days of the movie The Exorcism, my body went through convulsions. I threw up violently, like in that movie, and I said to myself, oh my God, I was sick for days because my body never ate pork, right? We live in a time, and this is really, really challenging. We live in a time, now again, I'm talking about live foods, right, versus dead food or inorganic food. And what most of us have come up on is we've come up on dead food, fast food, fried food, takeout food, restaurant food, cooked food. I could probably go on, right? But you understand where I'm coming from, right? And because we have come up on this type of food, there's only one thing that can take place. The body never gets a chance to grow, although we grow up. But we grow up and we grow sick. I'm going to give another shout out to an herbalist, an iridologist called Dr. Tim Morrow from the University of Common Sense. And what he says is, growing old doesn't make you sick. It is growing sick that makes you old. Dr. La Afrika says that before we were brought here, our life expectancy was 150 years old. When Europeans came down into Africa, their life expectancy was 20 to 30 years old. If you're living in the Caucasian Caucasus mountains, right? It's cold. You can't really grow anything. So you have to eat to survive, which means you are eating dead food. Makes sense, right? So if you're eating something that dead, that doesn't bring about life, that has no nutrients in it, it will sustain you and you can survive off of it, but you literally can't grow. So I'm talking about inorganic food versus real food. Most of us have come here and we really don't know what it's like to eat real food. Food with nutrition in it. Recently, there was a study that it says that 72% of Americans don't eat fruit. How many people have had 5 different fruits this week? Great. It says that 68% of Americans don't eat any vegetables. How many people in this room have eaten 5 different vegetables this week? I'm talking about real, live food versus inorganic or dead food. Okay? So, if a people that want freedom, that talk revolution, that want to be liberated, aren't eating live food to nurture their thinking, how can we ever be free? How can we ever be liberated? How can we ever seek any form of revolution whatsoever? you're gonna have to bear with me because it's gonna appear that I'm jumping around.
Take your time.
My presentation was on that screen.
Take your time. Take your time.
So I'm gonna give you a quote from Dr. La Ila Africa. He says, actually, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to start here. So I have a question for the audience. My question is this, because there's a whole lot of talk now of, and we've had it here in this group, what does it mean to be conscious? And I'm not talking about from a religious standpoint of view, but you can throw that in there if you want to. So, what does it mean to have an African holistic God consciousness mindset? What does one... I wrote some things down, but I want this to be interactive. Otherwise, you're going to get sick of me standing up here and talking and not having any interaction from you. So the question is, what does it mean to be God consciousness? What does it mean to be conscious? Because we have a conscious community out there, right? Everybody watches YouTube videos now. You got this group debating this group, right? There's a whole, and some of us, I'm sure, have at least been able to learn a lot by watching some of these YouTube videos. Hopefully it has sparked you to read a book, or many books, or come to our study group and then partake in the book that we're going to be opening and starting with next month. And many other books that this group has read over the course of the last couple of years. It's been over 2 years now, hasn't it? It's going on 3 years now that we've been holding the Dr. John Henry Clark study group. So I need some feedback from you. What does it mean to be conscious? Yes, brother.
To me, brother, to be conscious is once you know something's out there and you learn and you get a book and you read it and then you research that and you open up your consciousness that you didn't know before and you practice that and then you assimilate it out among the masses of the people. And so once you get that, you have that conscious ability that you can now become a teacher to others and open up their valves of unconsciousness by picking up a book and reading it, or even communicating like we're doing in this room. Sure, getting new information, do your own research and study it, and then come back and elaborate on it. And that's my consciousness.
Give him a hand. Okay, Brother Jerome, what does it mean to be conscious?
Well, I like to stand. Basically, it means awareness. We hear the term thrown around a lot, but this is not a new term. This is an old term. We used to use it in the term of knowledge of self, right? Knowledge of self. Now, I work in healthcare. I work in a nursing home facility part-time. Now, people with dementia or Alzheimer's, they're conscious. So they're conscious that they have a problem, but they're still aware of some of their surroundings, right? So when we walk around with a badge of honor saying, I'm conscious, are you really, right? Because conscious and knowledge of self goes together. Like Jake says, for instance, am I really conscious if I don't know how to eat to live? Right? Am I really conscious? Am I really conscious if I don't know how to heal the body? How many bones are in the body? What each organ in the body's function? Am I really conscious? Or is conscious just a word that we use to say that if I read a book and you might not have read the same book, and if you don't agree with me, well, you're not conscious. I'm the one that's conscious because I read a book and you don't agree with me. I'm conscious, right? So it has big meanings, and we throw the word around a lot, which not looking at the holistic point of view of the word. That's why it's so important that Jake is doing this lecture today, so you can see it on a holistic level. All through Nile Valley civilization, they were conscious because they ate right. When they exhumed mummies and opened up the stomach of mummies, they saw they had a herbal diet, they ate properly, and they lived long. So that's a sign of consciousness. It's a holistic approach to living.
Thank you. Yes.
I was going to say what Brother Jerome said also, to gain knowledge and to be aware of the knowledge that you have gained.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I think, like Brother Jerome was saying, like consciousness is linked with awareness, and I think that when you approach trying to explain consciousness, you have to understand like what levels of unconsciousness you have. Like when you say you're conscious, you can be conscious that you're here, that you know what I mean, that you can have this conversation. But then when it comes to your unconsciousness, it's like, do you really understand the conversation that you're having, that when you are around, or in a sense like people say like they're conscious, conscious rapping and they live consciously, but then you could say like the holistic thing of being conscious, like you really dead because you're doing like your habits. You feel me? Like you're killing yourself.
Right.
Like you feel what you're doing is conscious, but at the same time you're unconscious because you're not living right.
Right.
So I think it's like levels of consciousness where you are conscious of some things, but there's certain things that you're not, and that's where the holistic consciousness comes in and the God consciousness comes in, because when you're God conscious, you're conscious of all things and you're not destroying yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Good job. Okay. First, I'm going to give you an African proverb. The first time I heard this proverb, you ever hear something and it hits you just right? It hits you so hard that it hurts. So the African proverb is this: a man or a woman who cannot control his or her appetites or vices already belongs to the enemy. Has anybody ever heard that quote before? Anybody? A man or a woman who cannot control his appetites and his vices, his or her vices, already belongs to the enemy. Somewhere along the line we were told smoking ain't no good for you, but some of us probably smoked, right? Some of us were told. I grew up in Harlem, and I was told. Matter of fact, I didn't need to be told. It was during a time. It was during the heroin epidemic in the early 70s. Okay, I could look out my window with my binoculars into the park and see people strung out everywhere. I remember saying to myself, man, I ain't never going to do that. I said a whole lot of things with good intentions, right? Little did I know, from the time we get off our mothers, if you were fortunate enough to be breastfed, from the time you get off your mother's nipple, you are being polluted with inorganic, dead food. I bet you probably didn't know this, but the pharmaceutical companies own the baby formula companies. Okay? Everybody in this room has a level of consciousness. Some of us are students. Well, we're all students. Some of us are teachers, and to a certain degree, we're all teachers because we're all powers of example. Agreed? So, here's another statement that I heard my whole life. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Did anybody ever heard this one? But you can make them thirsty. It is our job, if you are conscious, if you have some level of conscious in some area that somebody else is not conscious, it is your job, it is your responsibility, it is your obligation, whether you open your mouth or not, to be a power of example. If you have the gift of voice and you know how to use it, it is your responsibility to teach. We know that we can only teach those that want to be taught. But it's your responsibility to be open to teach and share whatever level of consciousness that you have that somebody else does not have. Are we agreement on that?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Here's what I came up with. Even though I was a part of this Ethiopian Hebrew congregation in New York City, I knew about the Nation of Islam. I found out that when I was born, it was only 4 months later that Malcolm X was assassinated. 4 months later, he was assassinated. I was only 4 months old at the time of his assassination. But I always remember, and somebody said it, knowledge of self. I always remember hearing that, just like read books. I always heard knowledge of self. So we're talking about some level of self-sufficiency. The term was also do for self, right? We've heard that term before, do for self. We were also taught that we should find a way to provide jobs for our people in our own community. To me, that's a level of consciousness. Not only should we, and we dropped the ball, but not only should we seek employment, but we should seek to be employers. We should seek to be business owners. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's a level of consciousness. In the 19th and the 20th century, we had a religious faith that supported our liberation and fought for our civil rights, our human rights, and our freedoms. In the 20th century, it was different, but in the 19th century, going all the way back, and I had their names that I'm not as organized as I hope to be for this first lecture. But there were people who I could talk about Nat Turner, right? There were people that used the church where we assembled to fight for our liberation and our freedom. I also think that a level of consciousness has to do with educating our children, right? If you're sending your children to somebody else's school, can you expect them, or should you be upset if they don't teach you about your own history, culture, or politics?
Nope.
You can't be upset about that, right? That's something that, as a parent, you should be doing at home. You should be indoctrinating them to their own history and culture. And if you're not doing that, then when they grow up, you shouldn't be surprised how they turn out. Today they're calling it the educational school system pipeline to prison, right? There's been documentaries out on that and everything. You should consider homeschooling your children. I think we dropped the ball. And it's not too late. But we have to teach our children about African history, culture, politics, and economics. Because if you don't know about any of those things, then the only thing you've raised is a slave. Some people might agree. Some people might think the term slave is too difficult. I'm supposed to be talking about, and I am going to be talking about, health. But I had to give the backdrop to this historical backdrop because this is the Dr. John Henry Clark Study Group, right? Actually, the video wouldn't have done what I'm doing. I'm actually not doing that bad. Here's another one to throw out there. Maybe somebody wants to comment on this. If not, I'll just continue. But Dr. Laila Afrika says, it is easier to get an African living here in America, and I preface that, an African living here in America, not an African American, but an African living here in America, to change his religion multiple times, to change his religion multiple times, than it is to get him to change his diet once. We know fried foods aren't good for us. Perfect example? We know fried foods aren't good for us. I have to confess, the first time I had fried food, I was about 18, 19 years old, and I was hooked. I was hooked to my own detriment, right? Why? Because the chicken is not live. It's dead. And we've been convinced that protein is something that we need for survival. That's a lie. That's a myth. Anybody who believes that protein is necessary for your survival have been lied to for as long as you've been on the planet. Okay? What we need to survive is amino acids, not protein. Protein is a myth. Okay? But I was lied to. Not only was I lied to, but it tasted good. And because it tasted good, I succumbed to the temptation of I can't wait till the next time I can have some fried chicken. Right? If I go back to when we were children, and some of y'all might remember this. Everybody remember Kool-Aid? What do you remember most about the Kool-Aid?
Three spoons of sugar.
What you remember most about the Kool-Aid is you had this tiny little packet, right? And you poured the little stuff in, and then somebody had a big 1 pound, was it 1 pound? 5 pounds, right? It was 5 pounds, and the sweeter it is, did y'all know this? That they have done studies, and if you take rats and you give them sugar water and you give them cocaine water, the rats, which one are they going to choose?
The sugar water?
They're going to choose the sugar water. The sugar water, not the cocaine water. They're going to choose the sugar water. Now, that should tell you something about how early you were hooked on sugar. Some of us, I don't want anybody to raise their hand and confess, but some of us took those baby bottles, put some Kool-Aid in those baby bottles, and gave that to your children. Right? So you were, with unbeknownst to you, through your own ignorance. Ignorance is not a bad thing. It simply means that you do not know. You were addicting your children to sugar from the time they were, I don't know, whenever you stop putting milk in the bottle, right? Let me go back to milk, because I didn't even mention milk. I guess I'm getting ready to get into the main part of my presentation.
Talk about the milk. Talk about the
Milk.
milk.
Mother's milk are for mothers. Right? Dairy, cow's milk, is for who?
Cows.
It's for cows. A cow, in its first year of life, has to be 120 pounds in order to survive. So there are certain nutrients in cow's milk for cows. Who told us milk does the body good? Who convinced us, right, that you shouldn't give your child breast milk, mother's milk, which has galactose in it? It's the only, other than fructose, it's the only form of sugar that transfers right through the body, bypasses the pancreas, and goes directly to the cellular structure. It does this to provide nutrients
for that baby. Fruit does it, and mother's milk does it. Only fructose, and I'm not talking about high fructose corn syrup. I'm talking about fructose from fruit and galactose from mother's milk. Vegetables, in and of themselves, do not pass through the cellular structure. It has to go through the pancreas. And by going through the pancreas, it has to secrete, insulin has to be secreted in order to make that happen. Now, what am I talking about here? There's some people in this audience I would suspect are diabetic. And if there isn't anybody that's diabetic, they say that 80% of Americans are pre-diabetic. And do you know why they say that? Because they know that 80% of Americans aren't eating real food. They're eating fake food. So they know if you're not diabetic, you're on your way. Dr. Jennifer Daniels told me a long time ago, I went to go see her and I was scared to death. I had some boils showing up on my body and I'm scared because I don't know what I've done. And she asked me to fill out what I've been eating. And it was the most embarrassing thing in the world to have to tell her what I was eating because I knew better. And when you know better, you're supposed to what? Do better. But if you're hooked on food, if you're hooked on sugar, if you're hooked on the oils that come from that fried food that you're eating, if you're eating dead food, which is inorganic, versus live food, which is organic, then whatever's dead is going to show up somewhere in your body, or it's going to show up on your skin. Does that make sense? Yes. We're talking about inorganic food. We're talking about dead food. We're talking about there shouldn't be, from this moment forward today, there shouldn't be anybody in this room who goes to a convenience store and buys anything to eat. Because there's nothing in our convenience stores that is live food.
You mean like that chicken they sell down at the gas station nowadays?
I don't know, because I haven't been in one in years. But I do remember going in there, right? I do remember. I can make that open confession before I turn my life around. Going in there and getting some of that, exactly what you're talking about, along with those potatoes that sort of look like Kentucky Fried Chicken potatoes, right? All right, so I can make that confession. I did that. So I'm talking about, we're addicted to sugar. We're addicted to salt. We're addicted to oils. We're addicted to fake food. Most of us aren't eating fruits and vegetables as a regular part of our diet. Most of us don't know much about herbs. There's some scripture, right? Genesis 1, 29. And I'm not really a biblical person, although I've studied the Bible. And this scripture makes all the sense in the world. And God said, "Behold, I have given every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." We're talking about Genesis. We're talking about the very first book of the Bible is telling you you shouldn't eat meat. But guess what? What's that word? Cognitive?
Dissonance.
Some people would try to argue with me about how not only does milk do the body good, but I need my meat because I need my protein. Right? So, most of what we have been eating our whole entire lives makes us grow. We end up growing up. And the older we get, the more diseased we are. If it's not diabetes, how many people are familiar with having high blood pressure? Now, I got to tell y'all what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about, again, is the title. The missing link in regards to our African holistic God consciousness. If you are eating or drinking anything that is not a fruit, a vegetable, a seed, and most seeds need to be sprouted, an herb, then what you are putting in your body can only do one thing. It can only make you sick. Now, our bodies are incredible instruments, right? Some people have even called the body their temple, right? The body is your temple, and you shouldn't put anything into this temple that is going to destroy it. But what are we up against, y'all? We are up against an indoctrination through TV, television, radio, internet, that is a foolproof plan to make you very comfortable eating what should be uncomfortable. When you put things in your body that aren't real food, you should throw up like I threw up that pork when I was 18 years old. But that doesn't happen to most of us, right? Because we've been eating it since we were born. So our bodies don't know what to do with it. So guess what our bodies do? Our bodies store it. Where does our body store it? Our body store it as fat, right? Our body store everything that is toxic, that's what I'm talking about, inorganic food, it stores it around your heart. What happens? Eventually, heart attack. It stores it around your pancreas. What happens? Eventually, diabetes, right? It stores it. Pimples, boils, cysts, abscesses, and tumors. I just named 5 things. It stores it like a capsule to protect you because it's poison, because it's toxic. I'm telling you where cancer comes from. I remember being told that you are what you eat. I remember being told that that disease starts in the colon. Has anybody ever told that? I even used black seed for a while, right? And black seed says disease starts in your colon, and black seed is the cure for every disease but death, right? Well, I beg to differ. The real truth is this: disease starts in your mouth. And once you know better, you must do better. So when I talk about, and here's another piece of information. Again, I apologize. I'll get organized the more I do this. So I was told disease doesn't start in the colon, disease starts in the mouth. And so there's a lot of changes that we need to make if we're going to reach this level of God, African holistic God consciousness. If we're going to ever find liberation, freedom, revolution, if we're ever going to get there, there's some things that we need to do to start taking care of ourselves from this day forward. For me and my fiancée, this is the beginning of our 4th year. So I'm not standing above you preaching about something that I am not living. Okay? It's critical that I say that.
I think you deserve a hand.
Thank you. Now, part of the reason why I'm saying this is because we're at war. Does anybody agree?
Yes.
Does anybody feel like we're at war?
Absolutely. Yes.
Does anybody believe that there's a war taking place?
Yes.
I mean, it appears
You don't know, you just say begun to fight yet.
it appears like it's undercover, like it's not out there in the open, right? Well, I want to give a shout out right now to Dr. Frances Cress Welding because she is no longer here with us, but she is here with us in spirit.
Right.
Right? And I want to talk about quickly, briefly, she talks about why we are at war. Dr. Neely Fuller is another one, along with Dr. Frances Cress Welding, that talks about entertainment. What you're watching on TV is shaping your mind. You don't know it, but it is. When I was a child, they call it the idiot box, right? Read a book. Education. Our educational system, an educational system that teaches you nothing about your history, about your culture, about politics, about economics, can only make you grow up and be a paid or maybe not paid slave, right? They talk about economics. They talk about sex. They talk about labor. They talk about law. They talk about war. They talk about politics. They talk about religion. All modern religions. And that's not to say that we can't take something that was regurgitated back to us and make it spiritual. Because we are spiritual people. We are spiritual by nature. That's what we do. But there's something wrong with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those 9 things that they talk about as the premise for racism and white supremacy. That's what Dr. Frances Cress Welding would say. I want to add, my lecture is about what Dr. La Africa says. My lecture is about food and drugs. And did you ever ask yourself this question? Why is it called the Food and Drug Administration? And how many of you would eat meat if you didn't put any herbs on it? If you didn't season it, would you eat it? Would you eat raw meat? So you have to ask yourself some simple questions. Would you go up to a cow, right, and go down underneath the cow in order to get some pure cow's milk? Would you do that? I got to tell you, after they're done pasteurizing, homogenizing, doing whatever they do to that cow's milk, whatever nutrients was in that cow's milk for the cow, or for you for that matter, is no longer there. Do you want to know why? Because they've cooked the nutrients out of it. And then what they do to appease us is they tell you that they fortified it and they put inorganic matter back in it. And yet, now here's the thing. I don't know if most of you all know this, but Africans, by nature, Africans living in America are lactose intolerant. So if you're drinking milk, right, it is something that your body adapted to. It is nothing that your body needs or is used to. Most of us would get sick by drinking milk. And I'm not talking about just plain old milk, or when they started watering it down and then calling it 2%, 1%, skim milk, condensed milk. Milk in general that comes from a cow is not fit for human consumption. Yeah. Now I got to tell you all something. That poses a dilemma for us. Because when they stopped, when milk sales went down, guess how they got us? Cheese. Cheese. Look at TV. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but they just started bombarding us with commercials about cheese. Cheese, according to Dr. Sebi and other famous holistic doctors, causes mucus. Dr. Sebi says mucus is the only disease that there is on the planet. And I don't necessarily agree with him. But I don't disagree either. I was told it was acidosis. I was told it was inflammation. I was told it was dehydration. So there's more than just one thing. But since most Americans are hooked on dairy and cheese, and don't let me forget your favorite, ice cream and yogurt, right? Every time you put that in your body can't digest it. So what does your body do with it? It's going in one of those time capsules that I talked about. I talked about tumors, I talked about cysts, I talked about abscesses, I talked about boils, I talked about pimples. That's where it's going, and it's going somewhere in your body because your body can't digest it. Anything the body can't digest, it has no choice but to put it in a capsule to protect you from you, because it knows that you're hooked on it and you can't stop even though it's no good for you. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay, you had a question, Brother Jerome?
I just wanted to add, when you was talking about have you heard about the bill that Obama has recently signed, that all meat now coming from any country doesn't have to state what country that meat is from. Yep. The FDA, he just signed the bill, that it could come from anywhere in the world, packaged here, and you thinking you buying Purdue chicken, and it's coming from China or anywhere else throughout the world. The bill has just been passed.
I didn't know about that bill,
Yeah.
but I will tell you this much. We're at war. We're at war. We're at war.
Yeah.
We're at war. They're talking about depopulation of the country, the world. So we're at war. And the only way you can combat that is what? To do the only thing you have control over. Don't put it in your mouth. That's the only control you have, is by not putting it in your body. I do know this much though. About a month and a half ago, CNN put an ad. I posted it on my Facebook page. And it said, all meat, that includes fish, that includes chicken, that includes turkey, that includes red meat, all meat causes cancer. No, they didn't say causes cancer. They says has carcinogens, which means it has cancer. Okay? Has carcinogens. All meat has carcinogens in it. So if you're eating meat and you're a meat lover and you can't, and you just, right now, I'm probably not making some of y'all happy. I apologize, but I'd rather save your life than save your pride. All meat has carcinogens in it. It doesn't matter whether you fry it. Doesn't matter whether you bake it. Doesn't matter whether you broil it or boil it or eat it raw. All meat causes cancer, bar none. And if you notice, anything that's live that becomes dead does what? Starts to rot, right? Do you know that when they kill an animal, within 3 days, it's no longer red like the meat that you see in the supermarket? They dye it with nitrates to turn it red again. And they have to preserve it. And the meat that they killed yesterday, you probably aren't going to eat because they froze it, and you might not eat it for 5, 10, or 15 years. That's how much of a stockpile of meat that they have in America. Matter of fact, some people here are old enough to know this. I saw it. It says 65 years ago, 95% of the food that is in Tops and Wegmans and Price Chopper didn't exist. 65 years ago, everything that was in a supermarket, and I don't know about y'all, but I rarely go into a supermarket. And when I do go into a supermarket, the only place that I go to is the produce section. I go nowhere else but the produce section. I buy my vegetables and I buy my fruit, and then I'm out. Why? Because I know that what's in there. And when I was transitioning, I got to tell you, when I first stopped eating chicken, chicken was the hardest thing. Listen, let me tell you what I'm talking about here right now. Some people, once upon a time, and I'm talking about myself, even though you were told not to do something, you did it anyway, right? So I smoked a little of this and did a little of that, and I shouldn't have done it, but once I started, I couldn't stop, right? So I'm one of those recovering people that some people talk about, but I've been recovered for over 25 years, right? When I gave up chicken 3 years ago, I was having chicken dreams. I was thinking about all the different ways that I ate chicken. It reminded me of that movie Forrest Gump and Bubba, where you talked about all the different ways that you eat shrimp, right? When they started their shrimp business, and I'm not lying, I was in pain. And the reason why I was in pain is not only psychologically did I miss chicken, but our chicken is doped up. Now, does anybody know how long it takes a chicken to mature? If you took a little chicken and the egg hatched, do you know how long it takes that chicken to mature?
About 4 or 5 years.
18 months, right? A chicken from a baby to a young adult is 18 months. Now, most of y'all know about pork, but you don't know this about chicken. And we love our chicken, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
They take a baby chicken from the time it hatches, and by 9 months, it is the weight of a full-grown chicken. It weighs so much that its legs break, and they pick that chicken up, and then they do what they do, and then they serve it to you. I can go deeper because there's some stuff in here that you get. There's so many Dr. Baruch is another doctor who talks about how diseased we are. So we all know somebody that's addicted to alcohol or drugs, right? We all know somebody, right? You got to be patient with those people. Because now, if you didn't know some of the information that I'm telling you today, you're going to start going through withdrawals. You're going to start thinking about what you're putting in your mouth and in your body, which is supposed to be your temple. And don't take my word for this. Urban Kryptonite, watch this. If you were lucky enough to talk to Dr. Jennifer Daniels back in the day, I'm sure she enlightened you, and you probably ignored it like I wanted to. Dr. La Ila Africa, Dr. Queen Afua, and there is a host of other people that will corroborate what I'm saying. I don't want you to believe anything that I say today. I just hope, again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you can make him thirsty. My goal, my job is to create a thirst that you start thinking about what you're doing, what you're eating, especially if you believe that we are at war.
Right.
Now, if you don't believe we're at war, then it doesn't really matter. But here's another thing. Do you know that as a community, and it's hard to call us a community right now, as an African living in America neighborhood, right? Do you know that it only takes 2 weeks? If they empty out Tops, Wegmans, and Price Chopper, where would you eat? What would you eat? I'm going back to what it takes to be African, holistic, God conscious. So if you're not growing your own food, and somebody removes your food supply from you, now, Charlie, in your generation, everybody still grew a lot of food in their backyards, right?
Absolutely.
Does that happen anymore? Or is that going away? Is that going by the wayside?
It's gone by the wayside.
It's going by the wayside. So it's not too late to start. It's never too late to start. I don't know how big this mission is going to get for me, because I read a lot of information. I study a lot of information. I research. I probably spend 8 to 12 hours a day. thank the elders and my ancestors for putting this woman in my life who puts up with me. When I tell her I done found something new, she says, oh no. What is it this time? What do we have to give up this time? What else do we have to change? What other changes do we have to make? And I tell her, and I say, listen, you don't have to right now. But I'm going to present you with the information, and you tell me what you think. And for 11 and a half years now that she's been with me, she buys into, after doing her own homework and research, well, what he's telling me is right. I will say this too. Here's another thing I want to tell you all. And some of the things that we're doing and the way we're living right now, intuitively, we knew how to do this, almost by accident. She used to be 260 pounds. We were getting ready to go to Florida, and it hurt me to my heart because she's asking me what all women ask their man. How does this look? And I don't have an answer. I'm whatever you want, baby. Right? Whatever color looks good on you. Right? She is about 125 pounds right now. People knew me 3 years ago. I was 260 pounds. No, excuse me, 280 pounds. Pre-diabetic, double chin, wearing a 5X. And it hurt to get out of bed every day. I've had a number of knee operations. So my knee hurt, my hip hurt, my lower back hurt, my shoulder blades hurt. I was hurting everywhere. I had to stretch for 10 minutes before I got out of bed. And I was getting ready to let them, I'm talking about allopathic medicine because I was about to give up. I was about to let them do what they've been wanting to do, which is take this knee. I've already had 3 knee operations, so they wanted to replace my knee 10 years ago. They told me I was too young for it. And I said, if I don't do something, and then I snapped out of it. And I said, you know what, you got to stop pretending you don't know what to do when you know what to do. I was a vegetarian at 25 years old. I knew about blackstrap molasses and seaweed at 15 years old. I grew up under the dietary laws of the Old Testament. So I knew all my life what I should do and what I shouldn't do. But guess what? Like anybody else, I'm addicted. I became addicted to the food. I became addicted to everything that ultimately led to my addiction. Crack cocaine is nothing more than sugar and cocaine combined. Did y'all know that? So when that epidemic hit us as a community, some people made a lot of money off it, but other people were more addicted than the rat, right? Me being one of them. So what don't I do today? Sugar. The only sugar I eat comes from fruit or comes from maple syrup, which comes from a tree. I was gonna open up the last half an hour for questions. Okay? When I was transitioning, I was doing raw honey. I also do agave nectar, but you have to be careful about who your source is, because your source can take something that's natural and refine it and process it and make it unnatural. I'm still talking about what it is to take us back to what the missing link is. The missing link is real food. Okay? So we had to go back to going back to fruits, vegetables, seeds that are soaked and sprouted, and herbs. And again, I read that quote right out of Genesis 1. Revelations 2:2 says, herbs are for the healing of our people. Dr. Sebi quotes that all the time. Herbs are for the healing of our people. Medicinal herbs. Dr. Layla Africa talks about when Caucasians left their climate, a very, very cold climate, where things don't grow, and went down into Africa, the first resource, remember I told you their lifespan was 20 to 30 years, where ours was 120 to 150. They went into Africa for the medicinal herbs. Why? There was famines. They were starving. There were plagues. And disease was rampant. So, the same way Africa is being looted for the last, let's just say, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 years. Is that a good number? Somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 years, Mother Africa is being looted for its resources because all life began there. It's 3 o'clock, so I want to open up the floor for questions because I'm sure people have questions and I want to be able to answer them, but I do want to read this first because I was talking about how we're at war, right? This is in the beginning of Dr. Laila's book, African Holistic Health. And this is it's not even the first chapter. It says the overlooked revolution. It says the mindset of Caucasians with predatory, materialistic, white supremacy psychosis is a thought process in which the Caucasian believes good and evil are tools to be used to manipulate and control Africans. It says evil is created and maintained to control good. Good is created only to control evil. Within good there is evil, and within evil there is good. Good and evil are mixed together as one. Evil, slavery, is rewarded with good, wealth. Good, wealth, is punished with evil, embezzling, robbery, stealing of money, and etc. Good is used to terrorize, forcing the Caucasians' rules and laws upon Africans, and then bad, racial profiling, racism, discrimination, etc. is forced upon Africans for following Caucasians' good rules and laws. Africans must keep in mind that you do not protest, vote, demonstrate, or march to get rid of a mental illness or psychosis. Mental illness requires therapy. When blacks do not believe psychotherapy is needed to treat Caucasians with this psychosis, it indicates that the African has a codependent addiction to white supremacy psychosis. This is in the introduction of this book. I don't know if y'all read this book. Again, I said it came out in 1983. I'm pretty much closing my presentation with that. And I got to tell you that the more I learn, research, study, put into practice, the more I realize I don't even know, I haven't even scratched the surface on what I know. I'm humbled by it every day. I'm thankful that I have great teachers because I'm a good student. And I believe that we're all students, and one day, to some degree or another, we're all teachers, and that it's our responsibility to make sure that this information is passed on, especially to the generations that come after you. So for right now, that's the close of my initial presentation. Thank you.
Excellent job.
This young lady has a question.
The radio, he was saying that when milk is being processed or pasteurized, there's still blood in the milk from cows.
Absolutely.
So it's not really pasteurized.
You are 100% correct. There's a documentary that you can get on if you have a smartphone. It's called Cowspiracy. It's one of many. There's another one called Food Inc. There's another one called Forks Over Knives. There's another one called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Part 1 and Part 2. I have a shop downtown. I don't know if any of y'all know this, but I have a small business downtown. Been around for about 115 Jefferson Street. It's formerly Soul's Music. I've been there for the last 8 years. I have all these documentaries in my shop. I got to tell y'all that I have over 50 of these documentaries that talks about this information. I also, because of, and I want to give a shout out to Baba, Brother David, Baba TV, which is connected to and affiliated with the House of Consciousness, and Brother Sonetta in New York. A lot of the information that you have been fortunate to get through DVDs, you have gotten from this brother who brings them to Syracuse, and for the longest time is set up in the summertime mostly right across from Kentucky Fried Chicken, along with Brother Robert, who has a store where he sells artwork, African artwork, rugs, shea butter, black soap. But it's the information that for years we've been trying to, we've been hoping that we can get the community to not only support black businesses, but also learn so that you can teach. You have to learn so that you can teach. And you know, when I was coming up, we had this quote called, "Each one teach one." And somebody added, "Each one teach one to reach one." It is our responsibility to do that. Next question, please. Yes.
I want to thank you for inviting me over to Facebook about your presentation today, Jake. And I just, this past couple of years, been becoming conscious of everything that's going on with us as a nation of people. I know my close friend Nasheed for the past 20 years has been working on it diligently. And you doing your presentation last winter when I saw you regarding the grass that you also sell. I hope you still sell it.
Yes, by order only now.
By order only now. And I'm still doing my Nutri-Ninja drinks. But my question to you is now that I've just stumbled upon some information on milk thistle, and I wanted to know, what did you think about that?
Milk thistle?
Yes. What do you think about that? Is that something that I should stay away from?
Dr. Jennifer Daniels introduced me to milk thistle, I'm going to say 15 years ago. And she told me that what milk thistle will do, it will help to repair the liver.
Yeah.
Anybody that is struggling with recovering from addiction, anybody that is struggling with Hep A, B, or C, anybody that previously drunk too much alcohol, milk thistle is an herb that will help to repair your liver. So milk thistle is wonderful. It is one of many herbs. Right now I have 125 different herbs in my kitchen. I converted my whole kitchen to my pharmacy. It's my pharmacy now. So yes, milk thistle is excellent.
Thank you.
Next question.
More or less a statement. The first time I heard about how to eat the liver was by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I had that book, Brother Jake, by Brother Africa over 20 years, and never cracked it open, you know. And then, as I know you was going to do the lecture, I started reading the book. I said, oh my goodness. We talk about Nile Valley civilization in the Dr. Henry Clark Historical Study Group. These people, before the first dynastic period that goes back over 6,000 years, they was exhuming mummies and finding all these herbs and things on how to eat to live and survive way back into the all the way back to Tai Seti before the first dynastic period. And so that's why it's so important that you did the lecture today, because it ties right into Nile Valley civilization and how to eat to live, you know.
Thank you.
So I just want to make a statement on that one.
I have some quick sound bites. I want to take more questions, though. Yes.
Are you willing to share the names of the authors? Because you say them, but you didn't spell them out.
The authors? Absolutely, I will do that with you afterwards, most definitely. Thank you so much for your presence. I appreciate you. Some of y'all have seen, her daughter's name is Kampalia. I don't know who I met first. Her daughter has helped me tremendously. She only eats raw food. She helped me transition into a raw food life. I probably, at this point, we only eat one meal a week that is cooked. And sometimes not even that. And her daughter's a great inspiration. You've seen her here before. And, well, this wonderful woman right here is a retired school teacher from New York City, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And so we got to give her a shout out because she spent her whole life trying to educate our children. And even though she lives in this community now, she works with a population of people on the north side, Africans that are refugees here that need the knowledge and the information that she has. Yes.
What do you think about vegetables that are sold in the can or frozen? Do they have any benefits at all?
They have no benefit at all. Canned foods are no longer, frozen foods, yes, but canned foods are no longer live foods. They use a preservative that destroys the nutrients once it's packaged in a can.
So instead of canned goods, we should be buying
all canned goods we should not. Frozen, yes. Canned goods, no.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Canned goods are mainly for like if we have a war or an emergency or whatever, and we can't get to foods, so we just eat the canned food.
Well, honey, we've been at war for, some will say 600 years, and some will say 6,000 years. We're at war right now, but I understand what your point is. Yes.
There are like some people who have lived 100 years or maybe 90 years that has eaten this dead food, you call it. Would you say like eating life live longer, or is it like an immortality thing? Like, is there anything that ties in like?
That's a great question.
With how people.
That's a great question. I'll answer it for you. Most people that are 100 years old that eat meat and dairy products, they're 100 years old and they're in a wheelchair. And they don't have their faculties with them anymore. Their mind is gone because senility, dementia start to destroy the mind. Because mucus destroys the mind. Mucus destroys the body. When you take people that are 100 years old and they eat a plant-based raw food diet, they have more energy than most of us in this room because they're still eating live foods. So it's a difference of quality of life. But here's the problem. You're talking about people, right, that aren't up against the war that we're up against today. Like, let's talk about our water supply. Fluoride, right, is in our water supply. Fluoride is a poison. When I was a little kid, I remember you had the skull and you had the bones, and it said sodium fluoride, and it was called poison. Do not drink. Now they take that and they put that in our water supply, and they tell you because you're getting it in small doses, you're okay. So somebody that is old isn't afflicted with the way we're being bombarded with poisons and chemicals today. Let's say there was 4,000 chemicals 30, 40, and 50 years ago. Today there's over 400,000 of those same chemicals. So the diseases that used to affect adults are now affecting children. We have hospitals that have children hospitals for cancer now right here in Syracuse. Children didn't get cancer. Most old folks, when they passed on, they expired from old age. Now everybody that expires, they expire because there's a disease label attached to it, and that's a direct result of what you're talking about. That was a great question. I hope I answered it to the best of my ability. Yes.
Okay. If we want to compare people that are now about 100 or so, and another group that is now coming up, we forget that in the olden days, I go back to about 70, 80 years ago, the old folks took care of themselves. No matter what they ate, they did something every month or maybe twice a month, which they call cleaning the body. Okay? And what happened is we forgot what our parents used to do for us. A day or 2 days in the month, you did not eat any food. They give you the castor oil.
Yes.
Or the Epsom salts. And you did not eat for the whole day.
Don't forget turpentine.
No, I don't know about the turpentine.
I can tell you about that.
Or they used to give you shadow benny. If you're from the West Indies, you'll know what shadow benny is. They will go down in the bath, take that shadow benny out, boil it in the night, and in the morning you line up to get your shadow benny. And you did not eat any food for the entire day. And they'll tell you you're going to the bathroom every minute or so, and you have to report back to them what was coming out. And until it reached water, then they will give you something heavy to eat, and that is late in the evening. And they call it, you cleanse you out, and so forth, and then too, they used to monitor what you eat every day, and then, you know, they used to eat a lot of fruits. Now you don't have the fruits.
Right.
They cut down the trees, they build houses, they build,
That's right.
they build, what, how do they call it again? Skyscrapers.
Yes.
Okay? So there's nothing left for the children really to eat. We used to eat, it stay on the tree, it ripe on the tree, and that's when you go and you pick it and you eat it. Now you can't do that anymore, because they cut down the trees, they cut down the place, they mow the place down, they get rid of the farms and all this sort of thing, and now you're eating whatever Monsanto give you to eat.
Monsanto.
He's the one with the GMO. He's the one who changed the whole seeds in his lab. All the fruits that you're eating now, it's already changed by Monsanto, the peaches and so forth.
I'm going to throw a couple of quotes in real quick in the next question. This is how I'm transitioning. If it's white, don't bite it. If it's sweet, don't eat it. If the food doesn't spoil, don't eat it. If they need a commercial to sell it,
Don't eat it.
don't buy it. 95% of all foods in supermarkets today did not exist 65 years ago. If it sits on a shelf and does not spoil year after year, it will sit the same way in your body. It's called toxic waste, and that's what produces fat around your waist.
I just wanted to clarify something on the canned goods that was brought up. Our ancestors, to take away that, they used to can their foods and their vegetables and stuff and put them in the jars, like those mason jars there. So that's why, you know, when he was talking about the canned foods not good, all those reserves are gone, but in those jars they're not. They're whole in there. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
I want to tell you something else too. That dyes in our clothes, we're supposed to wash our clothes before we put on any clothes, because the dyes in our clothes can cause us to have boils too. So you have to remember that also.
Absolutely. Thank you, sis.
Give thanks.
Brother Lawrence.
All right. See you in the street. I just wanted to contribute to what folks were speaking of, and something about the vegetables that we see being sold today, that they're not 50 years ago vegetables. They're not. The land is now stripped of all the minerals. So they might look the same, but they're not minerals. They're not vegetables. You have to go back and get as close as possible to the original food. That's what Dr. Sabi speaks on, about getting that original food as much as possible, because they're not the same food. They may look the same, they're not. The banana is not a banana, the orange is not the orange. None of those things are the same anymore.
You're going into my next lecture.
As much as you want to eat, you can eat as much as it, and you will not get the same experience. Those people who last 100 years before, they last 100 years because they ate, and their body actually kept them through the hard time that came. The hard time of eating normal food without proper minerals.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree with that, Lord.
And yes.
This is the way I eat now, and it's taken me all of the 3 years in order to get to where the point that I am today. I eat for fuel and energy. Fuel comes from fruit. Energy comes from fruit. Healing comes from vegetables. Healing comes from the herbs. That's the simplicity of the way that I eat now. I no longer eat for comfort, I don't eat for pleasure, and I don't eat when there's emotional upheaval, turmoil, and chaos. We've been addicted, and it's hard. Like, I was a big sports fan. I haven't been able to watch March Madness in a couple of years because the commercials cause too much confusion while I'm trying to transition into the purity of the lifestyle that I'm living now. So I have a TV, and it's never on. It's never on. I choose what I'm going to watch, and normally it's something of an educational variety in order to keep me on this path. I am working toward my first certification as a detoxification specialist. I'm working on getting certified. There's a couple of levels. Eventually, I'm working towards becoming a doctor of naturopath. And what amazes me about that is I did not want to go back to school, y'all. I had no intention of going back to school, but I met a gentleman who told me that he didn't start until he was 60. And being 51 years old, you know how we have all these excuses. Well, the excuse was gone. What else am I going to be doing for the next 8 or 9 years until I'm 60? So here I am back in school once again, and loving the learning, and I'm appreciative because it's something that's useful and that I could provide a service in order to help people. Listen, I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of seeing my friends walking around on canes and crutches. I'm tired of seeing my friends that I know that are on medication for diabetes and high blood pressure. I'm tired of knowing that some of my friends that are 50 years old and they're having strokes. And I'm tired of hearing about everybody from 45 to 55-year-old dropping dead and dying. We don't die of old age anymore. There's a reason for that. And so that's what the reason for this whole presentation came about. So I want to thank you all. I appreciate you. You have one more question? Yes.
He can go after me.
Yeah, he had a question.
Yeah, he can go after me.
Yeah, I had a question
I have
on foods when it comes to fish. And it's to my understanding that hundreds of years ago, my native people used to preserve the fish through salt.
Yes.
Refrigeration was a key. And I'm just looking at any health concerns that was involved back then that we should be looking at.
The question really comes down to this. Would you eat it while it was still alive? If you're not eating it while it's alive, and you're eating it after it's dead, then that means it rots. That means it's inorganic. It's dead food.
Right.
We need to go back to a time, and you being Native American, we need to go back to a time where what we ate was live food. And so that's it in a nutshell. And you don't know, most of your fish that you're buying now is grown on farms. It's not like they're going out, somebody's cashing out, in the ocean that is polluted. They're growing these fish on farms. And what they're feeding the fish, you don't even want to know. I'll tell you that for a different discussion. Yes.
I dated this guy some years ago. He was a vegetarian. So I used to cook separate meals for him and with meat or whatever. So I got tired of cooking 2 separate meals, so I started eating vegetarian food. Okay, so then we broke off, and some years later I started to eat meat again, and I used to love fried chicken. So I ate a piece of fried chicken, and it was poison to my body.
Yes.
I can no longer eat chicken at all. And I think it's because of the hormones that they inject into the chicken. My body rejects it. I'll have to go to the hospital if I eat some chicken.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thanks, Jake.
I want to thank everybody. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your input. And remember, when we learn, then it's our responsibility to teach. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you, brother.
Big shout out to brother we ain't seen in a million years. Brother Nasheed over there.
Yes, sir.
Brother Sheed.
Good to be here, y'all.
How?